and if you fail, then you recalibrate, right? But you have to find a baseline. And so oftentimes your team needs, if no one's willing to step up with a reasonable argument for a baseline, make one. And so let's see, if I'm going to buy my own product, what percentage of my user base will I need to see using it so I feel good about paying that much money every year? And so we first started at 80%. We just kind of kept inching it up, and we were super happy when we saw our customers exceeding that. And then we started to this is where the team started to really get behind optimizing. Okay, well, we're not seeing this level of engagement in this account. Why not? Is their use case different? Is there something about the experience? Do we need to retrain? Do we need to provide, we ended up developing a communication kit and a whole tool set for our customers to use to promote internally. So you just find really great ways to optimize and improve. But you usually have to start somewhere and make it up.
And I think you could look at, we'll grab with that question just a second. I think you could definitely look at basic web analytics. We deploy just some basic Google Analytics just to look where people come into the platform, where do they stall in the user experience. We deliver units of value, whatever they might be. We're a predictive technology, we're delivering things. We try to measure those and then measure the downstream impact of those. So I think it's everything from, in my opinion, good software people use every day, like really meaningful software that people want to buy and pay a lot for. They log in every day, they spend large portions of their day being benefited by your service and solution. And those things are usually pretty measurable. And I agree with Shannon, pick a number and make it unreasonable for your team. I mean, you don't want to drive total like, oh my God, I can't believe we're only half of that number. But I think as the leader of the organization, your job is to create unrealistic possibility for your company, and living into something small is definitely not going to win the day. In the blue there, sorry.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question on the same thing. So you said you measure engagement, assuming that goes into some kind of licensing agreement, and is there a pushback from companies that would get your software, the SaaS model, assuming that's what you offer, and with regards to privacy or something like that?
With regards to what?
Privacy, data security, some things, what should you be looking at, or
How
should you be looking at?
I'm assuming you're tracking something on your side.
Yes. So you have potentially a couple questions there, so if I don't hit it, just correct me. From a privacy standpoint, most of the information that our customers have, that we have, or that we have in the Amazon cloud, is around marketing or educational content. So it's not super sensitive. So it's rare that we have a customer that's particularly touchy about that. With respect to the analytics that are in their Salesforce, most of those are kept within the Salesforce. So we're able to correlate content and onboarding training usage to pipeline growth and average deal size. But the correlation of that data is actually in their environment. Through our account review process, we're able to capture some of that, and then all the transactional elements that are within our own product we capture.
So do you have something in your licensing agreement that says that you're able to track how people are using your software?
From an aggregate level. Yeah, and occasionally there'll be a customer who will want to talk through that to understand it, but when they find that a lot of the content and the information we have is either not particularly sensitive or on an aggregate basis, we have no problems. And we're talking Siemens and Google and T connectivity, so I think as a SaaS product, organizations are getting a bit more mature and being able to work through some of these.
Yeah, I think when you roll it all up, you probably worry a little bit about like the identifying client names. If you're doing like a benchmark study across your portfolio and you do comparative analytics, I think that's a long way off. Usually from the startup world, you usually focus more on how their adoption analytics look like, and then the outcome analytics. Whatever it is you're doing, how's it working? But you guys deal with some third-party data that's a little more sensitive, I think, right?
Yeah, we do. We work through privacy and security reviews all the time and get through those. So, it's ultimately, if the customer has enough pain and wants to achieve the objectives by utilizing our software, they're going to overcome those and convince their security departments that it's okay. But just to share some dirty laundry, right? So we don't have it all figured out at Lytics. We don't have those metrics. We don't have usage. We don't have a dashboard. We can't tell whether or not people are logging in or how often they're using the product. That kind of blew me away when I first got to the organization. I was like, I finally got to a SaaS company. And I'm going to be able to see all this stuff and what customers are using it and which ones aren't and who's tailing off and who's at risk of churn and all that kind of stuff. So it was this old-fashioned thing called the telephone. And we got a call. We got to find out. Now, what's kind of neat is with Lytics, you can boil it down, because most marketing departments that are adopting our technology are really measuring metrics like click-through rates and conversion rates and ad spend and ad optimization. They're measuring those things very closely using Google Analytics and so on. And so what we can do is before and after. We can do A/B testing. So you use the segments that you built in the traditional methods. We'll show you artificially intelligent machine learned segments and tracking of users on your site and throughout all your different properties. And we'll build magical segments, and we'll guarantee you that they will perform better. We've never failed that test. And usually we're able to show an ROI on the purchase of their product within about 2 months. So that's pretty compelling, but it is a very manual process for us.
Well, hang on one second. I want to get to Barris.
No, I just had a follow-up.
Oh, you did? Okay. Go
Did you
ahead.
take the same approach of the phone when you were a puppet? Because they don't have any of that other stuff.
No, that was very hard.
You're not all the dirty laundry gets
No, it's an on-premise software, so they literally can't.
It was horrible, right? So, you know, over the course of, 7.5 years, Carrie was there, very successful sales rep, I just want to point that out. Yeah, you'd sell the product, and they'd be using a version that was 3 years old, right? And you'd send them emails and try to get them to upgrade, and you could never get them to upgrade, so you're constantly dealing with all these support issues. You could never tell whether or not they were using the product or not. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. So I think, at Lytics, for example, we are going to fix that. We're going to create a dashboard where we have more metrics and alerts like, hey, they haven't even logged in the last 2 weeks. Maybe a risk of churn, so but pay attention to that.
I would be remiss if I didn't introduce Barris back there, who is my mindfulness guru. It's not working, I'll be honest, but she says it's going to start working at some point. She really puts the time in. Barris, you had a question? Yeah, totally. Yeah, we spent more time together.
My question is back to the beginning. How do you strike a balance between transparency and credibility, where you need to be transparent, you're new, you're working out the kinks, but at the same time you believe yourself to be the expert, so you're communicating that clearly yet confidently within the context?
That's a great question. Challenging one, too. How are you the thought leader when you don't even have a product in space and you know the customer?
I know you're just pitching things that are in your head and you're going to deliver it 6 months from now.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. I think if you don't, if you're not honest about where you are, it will bite you in the ass. And, there are certain things that I sold that I thought, we would be further along on, and it's kind of biting us in the ass. And this is what I'm saying, what I mentioned earlier about how to recover on the customer service side, right? And it actually, because of the relationship that I managed to build and my VP of sales has managed to build with our clients and our customers, they were okay with it. They understood that we were building something quite new, quite challenging. So I'll use door locks as an example. Door locks is one of probably the most challenging things on IoT because there's so much security issues around it, mechanical issues around it. And we sold door locks to a company that we would integrate it. We didn't actually sell the hardware. And when we came to installing them and the building going live, there were really no good door locks for us to integrate with and install with, and we were very honest about it. And they said, okay, we'll try later. And so I think honesty definitely helps. Building a relationship helps.
I think you're going to have to be super confident, right? And it is a little also like your domain expertise. It's a little bit from an investor perspective. I do think people who've been in the domain and then spin out an idea or a product tend to be just simply more credible in this regard. They have experience in the space, they understand what they're doing. So if you've never been in the space and you came up with a great idea, I met a guy who was selling industrial products and now he wants to do mobile dental. I was like, that's a tough one. I don't know how to help you with that. But he seems to be battling it out. But I think you just have to be really, really confident and bold and make sometimes some over the skis. Yeah, a little over the skis and hopefully rally your team or apologize and maintain that relationship.
I apologize a lot.
Yeah, you told me you were going to swear more too, so when you got started, yeah. There you go.
There was a kind of coincidentally a book I read a couple weeks ago called Getting Naked. It's not as exciting as you'd think, but it's really about having really open and vulnerable conversations with your customers and being okay with it. And sometimes you just need to say, I don't know, or we're going to work on that for you. Or we don't have the answer now, but give us next week and we're gonna come back to you. And you just develop that trust and rapport and it's really fun.
So just, this is funny, but everyone who tries to attempt to do sales at Gala, I have them read that book.
There you go.
How do you walk that line though between being honest and transparent and vulnerable, which getting naked's all about, I read it also, and becoming not a thought leader, and becoming someone that doesn't deserve to be in the room? And why are you here? If you're vulnerable and you don't know everything, why did we buy your product and your service? Why are you here? How do you walk that line?
Exclusive.
No, but how do you walk the line?
No, you just do. I mean, some things you don't know the answers to, and other things you do. And you just have to balance that in the conversation. But there's a lot of things you do know, right? I mean, as a founder, you spent how many years cooking this up or working really hard on it, hours after hours. You know a lot, right? And your customers are going to recognize that and they're going to respect it. So that's really balance.
And I put that a little on the customer side, we'll get to that question. I think it's also about identifying the kinds of customers who are more naturally aligned with early adopters. And they talk about people on a bell curve, the early adopter, the late stage person. I mean, you really have to select these customers, not only because they're going to either, if net promoter score in a positive way is really a good thing, net promoter in a negative way. If you get a very conservative buyer who thinks he or she heard something that you said and it was not, it was a little too far out over the skis and you don't deliver, they're going to devastate your company early on. You're going to be really backpedaling from that deal. But if you get the right kind of buyer and you have a great partnership, you have a lot of trust and you're honest and transparent, hey, we're working really hard to get it right, they give you a lot of rope. And then they actually like it that you're working hard on their behalf and you're not perfect out of the gate. So I think a lot of it is customer selection. And I'm curious if you've ever had to reject a customer in that way and say, hey, this probably isn't the best partner for us right now. Maybe we should come back to the customer when we're a little more mature. I don't know.
Almost never.
You just take the money. Like Scott, he's a sales guy. Just take the money. Good luck client service. Yeah. Now you own customer success. You can't do that anymore. I'm telling you, you're a revenue officer. You're not a sales guy anymore. So anyways, I think there was a question. Yeah.
And just a quick follow-up on the getting naked in terms of resources. Do you have any good go-to resources, any of you, for founders or subject matter experts that really need to move into that sales role and do it effectively and efficiently, but also authentically?
Wow. What book do you read?
HubSpot actually has a really good blog for salespeople, and some of the things you might laugh at, you two have probably seen a lot of it over and over, but I think for people coming into the space, there's short blog posts, they're inspirational, they get a lot of things right, some things wrong, but I think it averages out, so that might be a nice inspirational piece. And then, I don't know, do you have a particular, new people coming into the space, do you suggest they start to learn a sales methodology, or?
I mean, the one that I've seen recently, so Gala also spins out companies, and one of the founders of the company he's trying to figure it out, and he stumbled across a Coursera class that's like entrepreneurial selling or something like that, and I think it's like some professors in Chicago, but really like everything that we talked about is reflected. He sent me, some materials, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it talks about how different it is to have kind of the founder selling and then advancing into, more mature capabilities and bringing in the Scots and that sort of thing. So I thought that was good. There's also kind of effectual entrepreneurship, which is another thing, which basically talks about, what means do you have, who do you know, what's your tech, these sorts of things, like tapping into your network, and basically doing exactly, again, what people are talking about, going out there, getting feedback, course correcting, and then doing the traditional MBA, defining the market, and targeting and getting really specific. So those are a couple of things that I've seen.
From the sales side, I abhor all business books, and I refuse to read them. I'm not kidding.
He's not kidding. It's tragic.
But there are two sales books that I read earlier. I do read a lot. Yes.
Comic books.
Yes, cool. No, I'm big into history. But anyways, so on the sales side, I think a very approachable selling book is called Spin Selling, and it's It's kind of the ABCs of selling, but I think it was transformative when I read it as a new sales rep, 20 plus years ago. Just great basics. Sorry?
Spin
sorry.
selling.
Yeah.
It's a classic, you can't miss it.
Yeah, and strategic selling, if you want to go to the
Yeah,
next level, which it talks about very complex selling cycles where you've got a lot of people involved that have to say yes, and a lot of people that can say no. That I think is fantastic if you've got a product that's, you've got to sell in that fashion.
You know what I think one of the most impactful trainings that I've taken, all of it, if you entered into sales when we did, probably sort of 1990, it was the back end of psychological selling. For those most old enough, and I remember people like Zig Ziglar and Tom Hopkins, and you had all these seminars that ADP and IBM were sending everyone to, and it really was around basically manipulation, psychological manipulation. When sales really truly did own the whole process. Nobody knew anything until you showed up, and you went from there. Then consultative selling, which is another common tactic, and then spin selling came out from there. And now, it's funny, you don't really see it as much anymore. Like integrity, honesty, candor, you're building trust, you're endearing. Right, I just think it is really a different world, although I really feel very thankful that I had the full gamut of training. Like, I think it's remarkable. I think people miss some of those key elements and just how to communicate. But storytelling, I find things, improv was probably the thing though that I was going to point out. We did an improv class with Second City. Really, it's about active listening. It's about completing a story. It's not listening to talk, but listening to be interactive. And improv as an activity is amazing. And this, even this is probably not like an improv event, but it has elements of give and take that make it interesting, or it's just one-dimensional. I think if you find yourself one-dimensional, you might take an improv class. So, I think we're just about done. Any last question? One more last question.
I don't want to mispronounce your name, but SCE?
Say something.
All right.
Nice. Say something. Come on.
So you asked the audience earlier about how many of the founders had had sales experience, and then I heard Shan, all your names are top, sorry. Shan,
Yeah.
okay. Had mentioned how important it was for the founder to be a salesperson, something along those lines. And my question was, of the four of you, how many of your companies were funded early on? And what are your strategies depending on whether you leave because of vision for the company versus deep technical expertise on the company's subject matter core topics? So you have different types of leaders, right? Some are extremely technically competent in the company's area of expertise, and some are visionary about how that will play out, but they don't necessarily have to be the best. So it's a time versus sales versus talent question. And just maybe all four of you comment on that.
So are you, if I understand your question, are you asking whether the founder has to be a salesperson or more technical to get funding?
No, I'm asking about the recipe based on whether you're funded early on and whether or not you are a technical expert or vision leader.
Okay, so myself, I do have a somewhat technical background, so I'm dangerous enough to put us in trouble, I guess. But I think just because I had to sell for so long, I started out as a human factors engineer. So kind of going back to the psychological battles, like that was my world. I read get anyone to do anything you want, way back when. But anyway, so it was, I would say that the combination for early investment, I think it's more helpful in my perspective to be able to tell the story and to tell the story well and be the visionary person that people would fork over a check to, whether it's investors or sales. But also bring to the table that technical co-founder, which I did.
I think we only have one other co-founder here, or founder, so maybe.
Scott Dorsey, co-founder of Exact Target, once said, "You need a geek and a shrink to start a company." And I think it's so true. I'm more the shrink that's kind of geeky, but I partnered with technologists to build out the product. But in a startup, everybody kind of has to sell.
Yeah, and our founder was super technical. The current company we run, before I was on his board, I came in later when it really was about executing. The go-to-market was more the problem than the actual product. The product was really solid. It was just kind of poorly positioned, poor brand awareness, no thought leadership. I think those things, and then but we were able to fund quite a bit more because we became better storytellers. Then he was doing the traditional 600,000, win a contest for 100 grand, go to a beauty contest in Bend, get 50 more, hold up a check. He was that guy, which is fine, but I think that person does struggle early, usually, in transforming that into more sustainable revenue.
How would, Leah and Scott, how would you characterize your companies?
Well, I guess I'll explain my experience. So I got my sixth startup. And I think most of those that have been the most successful have had a technical founder and a kind of sales marketing person. So you have the best of both worlds, to Shane's point. I think
And I just remembered that was a book, that was a different concept. He said a geek and a hustler.
hustle.
The sales guys get put down again. There it is.
Hey, is that a bad connotation?
I don't think
Yeah, I would say you need both, right? Especially when meeting, with investors, even with customers. I mean, they'll want to, talk to the technical folks and make sure that you know what you're talking about and you have a vision for the product going forward. But they also want to know, and I think probably I would overweight the ability to tell a story and have a plan and a strategy for how you're going to tackle a particular market you're going after.
Last comment?
Sure. So Galwa is completely bootstrapped and self-funded. So it was a long road, and it started with the geek. And then the momentum started when the hustle came in. So I think that, even in our case, we've seen tremendous growth when we added that second piece, both, myself joining and having a new CEO who's definitely more sales-minded to complement the deep tech that we're providing.
So thank you. I think I think we're done. A little bit of networking at the end, and I just would leave you with the thought that selling in advocacy it's pretty scary. You got to put yourself out there. Just be brave. Tell your story. Believe in it. It's probably all that you really need in the early days. And we thank you all for coming tonight. I hope this was useful.
Okay, everybody, what we like to say at TIE is in order to start a business, you need a hacker, a hipster, and a hustler. Which I think you guys pretty much, a hacker, a hipster, and a hipster is kind of like the marketing, he understands like the new markets. So anyways, thank you so much for our esteemed panel. I think this was a great way to kick off our Evolve Your Startup series. Thank you so much to JLL and Carrie Jeske for helping us put together, in addition to all of the other folks that are our supporters, Moss Adam, Uno Squared. We couldn't do it without all those folks. Come back. We'll be here on January 9th where we'll talk about developing products offshore and the good, the bad, the evil around that, particularly around IP. We'll be here for a little while, so feel free to network around. But thanks again, panel, and thanks everybody for being here.
It's all about you. You're going to have jobs forever.
Well, thank you very much.
Jason,